You want to cheat death? Well,
we're on the cusp of starting to figure out how to improve the quality of life for humans. So that's exciting.
But the excitement around that science is being exploited.
Everybody wants the high tech. Everybody wants the secret sauce that they slap on their ass.
You're bombarded with so many different facts and theories.
It's difficult for the public to make sense of all this.
I don't think you know what to believe anymore. I don't think you know what true science is.
And I think that's a tragedy.
We all want to stay young forever.
There's an entire industry that is talked into being dissatisfied with ourselves.
But we live in a world full of noise.
Celebrity diets and detox.
Of science versus pop culture. I'm here to change that.
Good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you about stem cells and media hype around science, which I think is a huge issue and one that's becoming a bigger problem.
In our quest to stay young, to stay healthy, there is one overarching question.
What is it about all organisms that we know about that causes them to get old, break down in the function of their cells and their entire bodies, and ultimately die?
Cancer, heart disease, osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, macular degeneration is a cause of blindness. The list goes on and on. What is the most important pathogenetic mechanism, the driver of all of these diseases? It's the fundamental biology of aging.
Aging is something that everybody experiences, right? So it's very personal, and people are scared of death, right? So I think that all of that ties together to make slowing aging or living longer or living healthier a topic that there's a lot of interest in.
That interest has exploded into a market estimated to be worth $216 billion by 2021. Anti-aging creams, facelifts, chemical peels, detox diets. We're obsessed with trying to stretch it all out just a bit longer.
It's a normal thing for people to have anxiety about, especially if you're not religious and don't believe that St. Peter's can be good to you and put you in the right direction.
I think people are putting much more faith now into technology. They used to put their faith into God and say, God, please help me. Now I think they look to science and technology to say, help me.
How do we know these people are putting their faith in the right place? Are they being taken advantage of by an industry built on our fears of getting old?
One possibility is that aging is just determined. It's inevitable. There's nothing you can do about it, and that's the end of the story. And that's not true.
Now, before I start, I do want to say that I am a believer. We're seeing great advances in genetics and transplantation and in other areas, so I'm a believer. But what's happening now is the excitement around that science is being exploited to market unproven therapies. And this is a phenomenon that I call Scienceploitation.
Scienceploitation is the exploitation of real science to sell questionable products to a vulnerable public.
Like stem cells, like transplantation, like genetics, you take that excitement and you market unproven therapies.
Scientific advances stir the public imagination, become part of pop culture, and are then packaged and sold on promises that may never materialize.
And people so want to buy the next gimmick that's coming out there. They want to believe it, and if you put it on Dr. Oz, it must be true.
It isn't new either. From magnetism to nuclear physics to quantum mechanics, scientific breakthroughs in the past have also inspired the marketing of dubious medical treatments and the spread of misinformation. Today, we see the same misapplication of science in everything from genetic testing to new age treatments to stem cell therapies. But with the internet, it is now easier than ever for that misinformation to spread uncriticized.
Where do you get most of your information about science?
Probably the internet. Whatever my children come home with from school. Whatever's in my Facebook feed, sadly.
Recent studies show that up to 80% of Americans online use the internet to browse health information. And there are thousands and thousands of health-based websites, user groups, and online resources. Those who use these resources report feeling empowered and, rightly or not, more informed about health issues. But in the race to get research funds, publish academic papers, generate clicks, and produce exciting media stories, the message is often distorted, exaggerated, or outright manufactured.
But what they're doing is taking the excitement and using it to sell bogus products.
Co-opting scientific language is one way to give evidence-free therapies a veneer of credibility. The results can be quite convincing.
Every system has a catalyst. The heart is what pumps the blood through the circulatory system. The peristaltic contraction is what pushes matter through the intestines. The lymphatic system has no catalyst. So it's the thing that is most easily to become stagnant. You know, so like on one side of the spectrum, you'll get edema, swollen ankles, puffiness here and there. On the other side of the spectrum, there's lymphoma. Lymphoma is the #1 cancer in America.
The details may be way off, but the lymphatic system is important to good health. So how does lymphatic enhancement therapy help this system?
So what are you doing right now?
So what we're doing in this treatment is placing the transmission heads over the entire lymphatic system. There are 3 gases in the transmission heads that get omitted. One stabilizes hormones, and the other 2 make the lymph more viscerous. It's mechanical, but it's also energetic. It's running on the same frequency as the lymph, along the lines of quantum physics.
So that your lymph system has a frequency.
Everything has a frequency.
And it's a quantum physics process.
Everything is energy, and everything has a frequency. And all disharmony, disease, is when things are out of balance.
For someone not versed in physics, that could sound kind of plausible. But the way terms like quantum and frequency and energetic are being used have no basis in science. They're just sciencey sounding.
So what about evidence?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Oh, so what kind of evidence do you look to for these kind of, how do you learn about it? And
reading, talking to people, and hearing people's results. Everything that I do here at the practice, I first did on myself, I do on my children, and then I do on my clients. And I think the evidence is, you know, when people come back.
Mm-hmm. How do you respond to people that say, oh, the kind of benefits you get for these treatments, it's all placebo, it's not real?
Anything that somebody thinks is a placebo, like let's say this, it says, oh, it feels nice, but I don't know if it's really doing anything. If you feel better, you're better.
Mm-hmm. What do you say to a patient that has gone to one of these clinics and they say, you know, I feel better. In fact, I think it did something for me.
I would say that's great. I'm very happy that you're feeling better. We hear positive reports from whatever type of unorthodox or unproven medical therapy you can think of, including ones that simply are not consistent with just a fundamental understanding of science. Things like therapeutic touch or energy therapies that are essentially almost metaphysical in their claims. They don't even accord with a basic understanding of chemistry or physics, let alone having support in medical evidence.
These therapies are largely based on a misunderstanding or misrepresentation of real science. So what should we do?
Well, I gotta tell you, it does feel really good.
That's what we like to hear.
Do you trust what you hear about science?
It really depends on what type of science.
I think a lot of people do really put their trust in their lives and their hands into these like doctors or pharmaceutical companies or like scientists that are discovering things. And they really want to believe what they're saying, but then when they change it around like that, yeah, you kind of lose trust.
Fats are good for you, and years ago they were bad for you.
Wine is good for you. The next day, wine is bad for you.
Well, no, you can't work out enough you can work out too much.
I don't think you know what to believe anymore. I don't think you know what true science is.
Why has Scienceploitation become such a international phenomenon? What are the drivers? How did we get here? I think a lot of it has to do with popular culture and how science is represented.
Between Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and everything else that's out there, you're bombarded with so many different facts and theories that you don't know what's true and what's not.
Social media and celebrity culture allows those with the farthest reach to have the loudest voice. Celebrities endorse a product or a therapy, and people flock to it.
We see a lot of therapies being marketed all over the world, from cryotherapy to stem cell therapy, and often for really serious diseases or for extending life.
Some of these patients are facing chronic illness or illnesses for which there's not that much that medical science today can promise them. So they're looking elsewhere, they're looking online, they're looking for some hope.
One such health trend involves subjecting your body to extremely low temperatures. Cryotherapy is popping up all over the country, endorsed by major athletes and celebrities.
I've heard of it. I've seen it at a gym.
When you go into, it's like nitrogen and it cools you down, like way down.
Its impressive machinery uses extremely cold temperatures to, quote, put your body in survival mode in order to treat a multitude of health problems.
It's good for arthritis and inflammation.
But the claims of benefit go far beyond icing sore knees, and they aren't coming from the most reliable sources.
How did you hear about it?
Through Tony Robbins.
The promised benefits vary widely, from treating inflammation to losing 800 calories in 3 minutes to the treatment of anxiety and depression.
When I was just shy of 42, I became pregnant with my daughter, and the stress of trying to be a working mother, it really wore me down. And I started about 6 months after she was born being treated for fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. I was on stimulants to wake up in the morning. I was on muscle relaxers. I was on tramadol for pain relief. I was on sleep medication. And my doctor had told me, you are not going to get better until you quit your job. And
Now, did you feel like that was an option for you, or?
I didn't want to quit.
All right, I'll take your row.
This is where I come Monday through Friday, sometimes on the weekend as well. I drop my daughter off at school, I get a cup of coffee, and I come and I do cryo, and it's just part of the flow of my day.
So this is all dry nitrogen gas. You do not want to breathe that in, so that's why we raise you up above.
What do you feel like it does for you?
It's given me stamina back in my life. It's given me mental clarity. It's allowed me to function as a more normal person.
Whole body cryotherapy is a relatively new trend in the US.
That was probably the 8th cryotherapy center in the United States.
Do you have a sense how many there are now?
They're in Dubai, they're here, they're there. I was just in London, it's there. I really think cryotherapy is tipping.
It's really being pitched, I've looked online, it's really being pitched as this anti-aging therapy.
Correct.
You hear that. You hear it being pitched, as you just described, as a therapy for injuries, and then also for depression. A little bit controversial.
People who don't understand it, that's where the controversy
Okay,
comes.
so make me understand it.
Cryotherapy basically has been around for centuries, cold therapy. I mean, people used to plunge in Russia with their children when they had illnesses because they believed at all the benefits of it.
This is something I have to try for myself.
So I gotta tell you, I'm a little apprehensive for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm not a big fan of that kind of cold. And the other thing, I'm not big on small spaces. And I've seen the chamber, and it's not big.
When I open this door, there's a lift in there, so I'll raise you up so your head is above here, and then we'll shoot for anywhere between 2 and 3 minutes.
Okay.
Let me know at any point in time if you start to feel like any stinging or burning on your skin, okay?
Okay.
All right, I'm raising you up right now, Tim.
Okay, I'm taking off my robe.
Perfect, you can hand that right over the edge to me.
Already.
You want to make sure you don't brush up on the edge of the machine at all.
Oh man. Yeah, it's definitely a chilly experience.
At its coldest point, it gets down to -154 Celsius. The goal is to get your outermost layer of skin between 40 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what triggers your brain to think you're going into that hypothermic state, even though you're not. How are you feeling?
I'm pretty cold, man.
Any adverse side effects?
You're really cold for a few minutes. Like
Yeah.
that's the adverse side effect. I'm not taking a medication and possibly causing a liver issue. I'm not causing a kidney problem. I'm not creating another problem. And I do believe in medications, but I also understand that there are limits to what can be done.
Because your outer temperature is cooling down so much, all the blood pools in your internal organs to keep you alive. That blood has become uber oxygenated in your internal organs. Think of the blood as a heat-seeking missile. And if you have a bad shoulder, I use it as an example, the cells of that shoulder have asked for a long time for healthy blood to help it recover and rejuvenate. This forces the blood to go to those damaged areas to provide recovery and repair. That's the number one benefit. Number two, reduces inflammations. The more inflammation you have, the more people have a higher incidence of diabetes, heart disease, cancer, stroke. An inflamed body provides a gateway for disease.
And you think the evidence is there to support that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anything that can take inflammation down can make us live longer and can make us live healthier and make us look better.
The role of inflammation in the disease and healing process is complicated and is still being explored by researchers around the world. And while direct icing can temporarily relieve the pain of certain injuries, there is little evidence to support the idea that whole body cryotherapy or even just icing facilitates the healing process. In fact, it can cause serious harm. It is a largely unregulated therapy, and treatments have led to reports of frostbite and, in one tragic case, death. Yet, people still report benefits.
It's really taken me from someone who couldn't necessarily get through the day to somebody who functions most of the time like a normal person would function.
The combination of high-tech machinery, clever marketing, science-infused terminology, and celebrity endorsements distracts us. In fact, there's very little evidence to support the idea that cryotherapy provides tangible health benefits.
In the end, if it's all placebo, I'm okay with that.
You can get philosophical on this point because you could say on the one hand, they are actually getting something out of it. Psychological assurance, confidence, something. They're getting
being proactive.
They're getting some sort of benefit. Yeah, it's not for absolutely nothing, but it's not maybe physiologically beneficial or it's not medically proven, but you could argue that they're better off psychologically going down this path.
So you might say, so what are the harms? Why do we care? Well, I personally think the harms are significant.
While placebos can be powerful and they have their place, they aren't necessarily harmless. Their effects can be small and fleeting, and for serious diseases, they may distract patients from truly effective procedures.
And is it expensive?
It's not. It's worth it.
The cost for this placebo can reach into the thousands, money that could have been spent on science-based healthcare.
It's difficult for the public to make sense of all this because I think it can be extraordinarily complicated. And that's where I think it's really important for us to be able to explain some of these principles of how do you sort out what's real science and what's pseudoscience.
Cheating death isn't just about living longer, it's about living better. More quality time for work, fun, and family.
What we're really interested in is expanding the period of life that's spent in good health, free from age-related diseases.
We want people to live healthy lives longer, and why not longer lives?
I'm thinking of my father-in-law who died at the age of about 86, I think. And he always said, you know, I hope one day I just drop dead. Well, he did. He dropped dead in the airport coming through security. But the thing is that he had an active and wonderful life. He was still traveling, he was still going places, he was still doing things.
The quest for a longer health span has helped the growth of the executive healthcare industry. One core claim is that their services will slow the aging process.
There's these new therapies, genetic research that's going on around telomeres and all this stuff.
I think a lot of it is built around living lives better, not necessarily living lives longer.
They engage a litany of tests: blood work, ultrasound, disease screening, and on and on.
It's almost as if you can't contemplate not moving forward with an option if there was one that was even remotely feasible.
Is there any benefit to this extensive testing? Is the science there?
Aging is one of those mysteries that people have a lot of difficulty understanding. Everybody wants the high tech. Everybody wants this, the secret sauce that they slap on their ass, right?
Dr. Nipping is the founder of the Deerfields Clinic. It is a highly personalized and exclusive program that's targeted at executives.
The model is really to try to engage our clients, not just in conventional medicine, the diagnosis and treatment of disease, but really understand their functional health, and also biomarkers that really predict short, medium, and long-term meaningful health outcomes.
These biomarkers claim to test things like arterial elasticity, immune function, cognitive function, lung function. The list goes on.
We measure lifestyle behaviors using a number of emerging technologies. We do very sophisticated fitness testing. But then we do very extensive testing looking at someone's biomarkers of function.
This is what's called the CIMT. We're determining if the patient have any plaque development or abnormal thickening of the arterial wall.
These technologies now offer a real way to cheat death. This particular technology is quite unique. It's called a sphygmocore. She has a pressure transducer on Kevin's radial artery. Well, we can actually determine how old your cardiovascular system is with this technology.
Alright.
These biomarkers are very predictive of future outcomes, and one of these is telomeres.
Telomeres are repeated sections of DNA material that protect genes from damage.
They're like the plastic tips of a shoelace. Every time a cell divides, these telomeres get shorter. And so imagine that every time you tie and untie your shoelace gets a little bit shorter. Eventually, when the shoelace wears out, it no longer performs its function. Theoretically, you can push this out even further and have a very short period of time, maybe a year, where you're sick and infirm and you die at advanced age.
This is an exciting area of research, but here's where Scienceploitation comes into play. Telomere research could be a key to understanding aging in certain diseases. Researchers have found, for example, a correlation between shorter telomeres and aging. But until we understand the implications of the science, rushing a telomere-based service to market seems unlikely to provide clear health benefits.
In any field like this where you're getting more innovation, you always have people who take advantage of that cutting edge and will jump ahead sooner than they really should. As we expand technologies, these problems we're talking about are actually going to get worse than they get better.
It's a truism that the more modern and the more sophisticated the information, the more the potential for unanticipated problems. It's only natural to think that if you know more about what's coming, you'll be able to deal with it and tackle it. And unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. You know, if you take women aged 40 to 49 years of age, if they have a mammogram once every 2 years for 13 years, you will save one life if you screen 2,400 women. And you'll have about 400 women will have false positive tests. And over that period of time, you will do 10 unnecessary mastectomies. So because the tests aren't perfect, you'll find things that aren't really a problem that need to be dealt with. You'll find cancers or things that look like cancers that aren't a risk to your health. And then there's always the side effects from the treatments themselves.
You know, I saw an interesting chart recently. Mortality rates from the turn of the century, 1900, till now. Right? And if you take away infectious disease, it really hasn't budged that much. It's gone down, you know, the mortality, but not a whole bunch.
We have less control over death than we think we do.
From a technological perspective, maybe our focus is not exactly where it should be.
But I wouldn't want to leave the impression that no preventive services, no kinds of screening are beneficial. There are some beneficial screening tests for sure.
Colorectal.
Colorectal cancer is a great example. Cervical cancer screening is another one. But be skeptical. Ask a lot of questions. What are the benefits and which benefits are proven as opposed to potential? And ask about risks.
There are controversies about the reliability and accuracy of many of these tests, and no real evidence that they will lead to a longer, healthier life.
People are going to see this information, they're going to see this hype, they're going to buy into the marketing, and they're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars to get a treatment that probably doesn't work. We need legitimate trials, we need good science, we need real science in order to ensure that this stuff is effective and that this stuff is safe.
At this point, it's possible to feel that all the anti-aging treatments are nothing more than false promises. But there is exciting research happening. Few scientific advances have captured the imagination of the public as much as stem cell research.
Stem cells are basically the building blocks of life. Stem cell research is popular because it's tremendously powerful. The power comes from being able to generate virtually any cell type in the human body.
They promise a blank slate upon which we can fix all of our problems.
The field is explosive. The research is progressing in leaps and bounds. We're understanding more and more about what makes these cells tick. And by understanding what makes them tick, we can then begin to manipulate, control them, and exploit them therapeutically.
But while these scientists may be working in the realm of real science, stem cell research has not been immune from scienceploitation.
If you Google stem cell therapy, what you get are websites of clinics from all over the world. People are flying to China, they're flying to India, they're flying to Russia. What kind of diseases do they say they can treat? ALS, Alzheimer's, autism, brain damage, anti-aging, of course. You name it, these clinics will have a stem cell treatment for you.
There have been studies that show that there's at least about 1,000 clinics.
1,000.
Advertising in the English language, which, with a very weak basis of evidence to support their claims, make fantastically broad claims about what stem cells can be used for in the present day.
And these claims range from the plausible to the absurd. Stem cell sprays, stem cell supplements, stem cell baldness treatments, stem cell orgasm enhancers, even a stem cell bra.
We looked at stem cell facial creams that are allegedly infused with stem cells. This is Scienceploitation at work.
So I'm just gonna apply numbing cream on her.
This numbs her skin
Yeah.
so she won't feel the procedure as much.
Yes.
So are actual stem cells involved? Or,
Yes.
And you're actually injecting those into her face?
I'm not gonna inject it. I use a tiny microneedle. So what microneedle is, it causes you tiny micro damage to your skin.
I've heard it called controlled wounding. Is that fair?
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah, that's what we do here. Yeah.
So Michelle, are you apprehensive at all? Are you worried about this at all? Or?
Not worried at all.
Falling asleep. If I would just put the serum on, it would just sit on the surface. So this actually, because I cause so many micro damage to the skin, little tiny holes, the serum actually goes deeper in, will heal the skin faster. The botanical is made out of a Swiss apple. Swiss apple have very similar cell like what human does. So your skin recognize them.
So this stem cell product is from the Swiss green apples. And these stem cells come from Hungary, is that right?
Yes, I order mine from Hungary.
And they just don't break down when they're in the jar there? They don't just fall apart?
No, no, they're not.
This isn't, here's a cell that, the stem cell that's powerful, the magical stem cell, we're gonna put this in your body and it's gonna fix whatever's
also,
wrong with you.
It's not one treatment. Each particular condition being treated is a whole other different problem. So there's not one stem cell type that cures everything. In fact, that's one of the hallmarks of a bogus snake oil treatment, that they have one treatment that does multiple conditions.
I love this treatment because it's great if you have acne scar or if you have a little bit damaged skin or even if you have deep wrinkles.
If someone tells you that they can do this in their home office, some alarm bells should be going off. It's expensive and complicated and very carefully and thoughtfully designed. It's not walking into a clinic and leaving the same day.
Michelle, do you love this process? Is that true?
I do. I feel like this works right away.
Any kind of products with stem cells, they do work right away. But the apple is the Swiss apple. It's the green one. It has something really special in them.
Well, they do taste good.
Yes, it does.
It must be good for your
Yeah,
face, too.
it is good for your skin, yeah.
And you don't think it's placebo or...
No, not at all. Not at all.
Anybody who wants to sell snake oil can say, oh, I've got a stem cell here, and they're going to make you young again. Wow, that's great. They're going to make you young again. These things do not stand up to scientific scrutiny.
Anytime you see a claim that just broadly uses the word stem cells, you should be skeptical.
These people are not reporting the results. There's no explanation of what the procedure is, what the cell preparation is. It's hocus pocus kind of medical delivery of care.
I'm gonna throw out some existing stem cell products, and I want you to give me your quick response to whether it's scientifically legitimate or bunk. Stem cell facial cream, anti-aging facial cream.
Bunk.
Stem cell weight loss products.
Bunk.
MS and ALS.
Bogus, totally bogus.
Autism.
Bunk.
Can I use a
Drop the F-bomb.
bullshit? It's bullshit.
The evidence simply is not there to the satisfaction, not of me, but of the expert communities of doctors and scientists working in those specific areas.
What is the problem? Why is this a big issue? Why is it more than just selling face creams, and why do we care about it? This is a field that has grappled with cloning. It's a field that has grappled with embryonic stem cell research and all the controversy that surrounds that. What did this community say? The single biggest issue that we face now? The marketing of unproven stem cell therapy. Scienceploitation.
I get it, right? I can see why patients want to do this.
And these people aren't stupid, right?
No.
These patients aren't stupid. They're thoughtful, and often they've tried to do the research themselves.
It's much more likely to be tempting if you're facing a really grave circumstance and you think it couldn't get any worse, right? What else do I have to lose? But that's not the end of the story.
So what are the harms? Why do we care? First, you have real physical harm. There are reports of people going to these clinics and tumors develop. There have also been deaths associated with these treatments, with these clinics. Also, strange things happening like this. This is a report of bone fragments growing in an eyelid as a result of the injection of stem cells.
There was a case of a child who had neurodegenerative disease. The child was from Israel, first world country, great medical care, but there is no established treatment for this disorder. So his parents, in desperation, took him to a stem cell clinic in the former Soviet Union, where he received an injection into the brain of so-called fetal stem cells. Several years later, the child began to develop severe headaches and then developed a seizure disorder. And they found multiple tumors growing in this child's head and spinal cord. It was from at least 2 different donors. So they'd taken some brain cells from a male and female fetus, mixed them together, and just squirted them into this kid's brain without any oversight whatsoever.
Sadly, there are still lots of diseases out here which don't have a lot of therapies, and patients are looking everywhere.
These patients, they don't really have anywhere else to turn. And because that, they're actually finding these therapies that they may not trust, but they are so in need that they just jump at any chance to help get better.
These patients come to the clinic, they get a shot in their knee joints, they get a shot in their eyes, they get a shot in their brain. They're sent off back into the world to the care of their local physicians with no follow-up whatsoever. This is predatory.
Despite these issues, stem cell research remains an incredibly promising area. We just have to cut through the hype and exploitation.
Yes, there are some things that we can use stem cells for. There's bone marrow transplantation. There are stem cell treatments for grafting burn victims and wounds. That's still coming along. And there are some stem cell interventions that can be used for the eye.
These procedures highlight the importance of identifying and calling out scienceploitation. Bad representations of science can warp public perceptions and divert funding from effective procedures. So, how can we separate good science from bad?
Where is stem cell research right now? This is a very exciting field. This is a field with great promise, but the science is not there yet.
We've seen the potential harm of unproven stem cell therapies and scienceploitation.
Some of these clinics claim to be able to cure everything from autism to erectile dysfunction. I grew up in North Dakota, and to just use the plain English of North Dakota, almost all of this is bullshit.
Dr. Chuck Murray is a cardiovascular pathologist. He and his team are researching stem cell use to promote muscle regeneration for injured hearts.
Our approach is to try to harness the power of stem cells to become anything in the body. And if we can do that, we should be able to understand how we're formed in the first place, build tissues outside the body so that we can understand better how complex things function, like the human heart or the human brain or the human kidney. And down the road, the hope is that we can actually use these as bricks and mortar to repair the body itself. These are a specialized type of stem cell that's called an iPS cell, an induced pluripotent stem cell. So these guys used to be skin cells. And then this guy in Japan named Shinya Yamanaka came up with the most amazing discovery of the last couple of decades in my mind, where he figured out how to turn the clock back on them and to say, you're no longer just skin, you're going to be the equivalent of an embryonic stem cell. And you can become any of the 240 some cell types in the human body once again. Heart muscle, for example. Or we can turn it into brain cells, or we can turn it into insulin-producing cells for the study of diabetes or the treatment of diabetes. He got the Nobel Prize in 2012 for this, very deservedly so. So what you're seeing here is a culture of human cells that we took through this process of differentiation. We gave them a series of chemical signals, and what they ended up making is human heart muscle. And if you watch, you see that the clump is beating in synchrony, just like the heart beats in synchrony, because they touch each other and they make electrical connections, and electrical current flows from one to the next. And so we can now grow up these human heart muscle cells by the billions, the hearts of heart failure patients, grow back the muscle tissue, and this will restore the pump. And I can guarantee you right now, in every hospital, we have people who are dying because they don't have enough of these cells in their hearts. If this procedure works as well in humans as it works in monkeys, it's going to be revolutionary. The biggest question that I get is when? Why can't you just get going? Who's stopping you?
There are scientific methods that go back centuries. How we observe, how we measure, how we can repeat things. There are some basic scientific tenets that should be able to be answered by anyone who's trying to sell them anything.
You know, it's possible that all the work that's been done in animals in the laboratory will only work in the laboratory because that's a very nice, safe environment where there's lots of food, no predators, no infectious agents.
It's a complicated series of procedures that's evidence-based. It's been arrived at through analysis of previous studies and looking at animal studies.
Science is formally communicated through journals, and the journals have an editorial staff that does quality control, and they send this out to what we call peer reviewers, other scientists who are working and have expertise in the field.
Which can take years, so there's extensive follow-up of the patients as well.
There's layers at the regulatory level, there's layers at the cell manufacturing level, there's layers at the animal studies.
What does this all mean? Our best tools against scienceploitation are good science, balanced science communication, and patience. But how does this work with a public hungry for advancement?
It's very easy to become frustrated by the fact that the progress seems exceptionally slow. But we mustn't forget that we must also protect the public from the harmful effects of therapies that have promise but have not yet been proven or tested sufficiently.
It's frustrating for all of us because everybody wishes it would go faster. On the other hand, it's the sort of thing, since it's the first time we're going into this area, we don't want to screw this up.
We looked at how newspaper articles represented time to clinic. We found that almost 70% of the articles suggested that that research was going to be in the clinic in 5 to 10 years or sooner, which in scientific terms is like a blink of the eye.
Science hype is a problem. It's not just a stem cell problem. We see it in a lot of biomedicine. Those things, of course, create this kind of atmosphere of excitement and expectation about stem cells being
a revolution.
All of these kinds of headlines give the impression that the science is there, that the therapy is ready, that these unproven therapies perhaps are real. And that's why it's so easy for these clinics to utilize the science hype to sell products.
This is transformative technology that's going to change the practice of medicine.
But we shouldn't let that genuine excitement be leveraged to sell bunk. What's in the future?
I'm really excited about these new treatments for type 1 diabetes that are coming out. These are in clinical trials right now, and they look very, very promising. That could just transform the lives of these patients. Curing blindness by transplanting retinal stem cells and also rods and cones that detect the colors. That's also in clinical trials. Treatments for hundreds of diseases are being developed through research and experiment and eventually clinical trials. So there'll be many, many diseases which we'll be able to treat. And I think what we're going to see in our lifetime is we'll pass through a tipping point where regenerative medicine will become the norm. It will transform the practice of medicine. And I think many of us believe that this will occur within our lifetime, probably when I'm really, really old, before I die.
Remember, there have been major advances made in life extension. The fact that you could do a transplant, the fact that you could administer antibiotics to a dying person and save their lives. I mean, those were amazing things. Those truly rescued people from death.
There's incredibly exciting research going on all over with genetics, with transplantation, and certainly with stem cells. The problem is often these advances are tiny. They're just one incremental but important step forward. And then that one little step is used to justify a whole bunch of unproven therapies, even though the science isn't really there yet.
How do you help people in general figure out this is one thing and this is something else? And this clinic that's offering you these therapies of infusions of whatever is any different?
There are people out there who are making a lot of money by exploiting patients' hopes and expectations and their fears as well.
We create these hopes that things will be fast and they're going to have an impact in everyone's lifetime this week or tomorrow or at most next year, when in fact very few things in medical science happen that way.
And it doesn't help that there are people on the fringe who have gotten some legitimacy that there's really very little scientific basis for, but they get talked about in the media as if they're legitimate scientists.
So, after all that, how are we to know the good from the bad?
Any dose of healthy skepticism walking in is always good. Don't just listen to the person who wants to sell you the product. I mean, I would never walk into a car dealership and just say, everything you tell me, I'll accept. Yeah.
Real science can be relied on, but it's complicated, it's hard work, it's not simple. If you're reading something that says, well, here you go, just take this, or look at this, if it's really straightforward and easy to understand, maybe there are more questions that need to be asked.
The question is not so much, does it make me feel good? Am I happy with it? Because obviously that's important to the person. Just try to get some follow-up with the physician or follow-up with somebody else to see if there actually was any measurable difference. Somebody has to do that. Somebody needs to sort of keep track of, is this stuff really working?
The trick is to show why our work is relevant while really keeping our claims not too far from our data.
Because the science really is promising, but we need to have patience and faith in the process.
We're on the cusp of having interventions.
Cancer has been cured 1,000 times in the mouse, and heart disease has been cured about 500 times in the mouse.
We know they work in laboratory animals, and there will be more that come along. It's up to the scientists who work in the field to get the message out that this is a viable approach to improving human health.
We want to face the challenges that are associated with getting this stuff to the clinic. We do want this stuff to get to the clinic as fast as possible. So we need policies that allow rapid translation, but that rapid translation should not compromise the science. It should not compromise public safety.
We're on the cusp of starting to figure out how to improve the quality of life for humans. So that's exciting, and there's lots of reason to be enthusiastic about that.
The trick is to speak to people's hearts and imaginations and let them know where this is going to go, but to give a realistic sense of the road that lies ahead.
And I also think that we need to be careful not to take away hope. That's what's driving a lot of this. People are exploiting hope. They're exploiting people's desire to live longer, to live better lives, to cure horrible diseases. They're exploiting that to sell unproven therapies, and I think that's a tragedy.
Let's just chill out a little bit, take a breath, and let people know that you can have absolutely wonderful science that still can be a decade or two from making a clinical impact.
It's important that we treat our problems with real, evidence-based solutions. Using unproven therapies can cause real harm.
I'm a physician, and I'm very sympathetic to the sense of desperation where you don't feel like you have any options. But I'd submit it is still worse to be desperately ill and to be swindled.
So what's the answer? Is it realistic to think we can cheat death? Yes, but it's simpler than you think.
You want to cheat death? Well, if you want to maintain your health, it's grandma's stuff.
Unfortunately, your grandmother was right.
Guess what? You should eat more vegetables.
Number one is don't smoke.
I think number one, find an activity that you like. Find a type of exercise that you enjoy.
You ought to eat a diet rich in fruits and vegetables, and you ought to get exercise.
Don't smoke, exercise, get sleep.
Go and exercise 30 minutes every day.
Live an active lifestyle.
This business of exercise is super important.
And then just enjoy life a little bit.
Physical activity is fundamental, but also relaxing, to have a pleasure.
There's a lot of research that people who are lonely, they don't do as well.
You get a good night's sleep, you love someone.
To be in a community, engaged cognitively, that seems to be super important.
Ignore the bunk. Ignore that celebrity noise.
And it's not a complicated message, and I think inherently most people know that.
And that's all you really need to worry about.
In our desire to cheat death, we must not fall prey to science hype. True science may move slowly, but the results are real and can be profound. I have hope for the future because I believe in the process.